What's up, everyone? How's it going? And if I'm here and you're here, they let us make it to Friday again. So you know what that means. It's time for another episode of the Leaf podcast. And this one's going to be a little weird. I mean, they're all weird, let's be honest here. But this one's going to be quite weird, I guess. It's going to be crazy. Let's just put it that way. I have a crazy encounter involving possible alien refugees. And that encounter is pretty wild. It's pretty off the deep end. But before we get into that, I found this story in my inbox. And this guy wants to remain totally anonymous, so that's great. The story is pretty wild. It's not one that I think I've ever heard before, but there is something in it that does sound familiar to me. And I'll get to that in a second, and you also might pick up on the same thing. But here we go. So, at the time of this, he was not having a great time in life. It was the mid-2000s, and he says the world was very different for him then. He said that he was kind of an alcoholic, kind of an addict. He was living with two of his uncles, and they had a few daughters who were basically crazy about Barbies. And he says that this never bothered him, and in fact, dolls still don't bother him. But it was just very strange what happened. So during this time, it was the weekend, and he was getting extra drunk because, it's the weekend. And he was coming back pretty late in the night. The area that he lived in at the time was sort of in the city, but sort of in a rural part, kind of near the city limits. So it's pretty quiet there. He even says maybe too quiet. So to get to his house, the way he takes to get there is he walks past a convent. He says that the place always gave him real off or bad vibes every time he went past it. But this one particular night, when he was drunker than usual, he felt a very heavy feeling on his back as soon as he got by there. He said it felt like that somebody was on his back, somebody was on top of him in some way. He was thinking that he was just a lot drunker than he thought, but this heavy feeling follows him all the way home. Out of nowhere, he loses the feeling as soon as he gets into his living room, and then he continues on down the hallway to his bedroom to sleep. He wakes up again at 3 o'clock in the morning because he has to go to the bathroom. But suddenly, he tries to get up, and he's pushed back down on his mattress, and suddenly, he feels stabbing pains all over his body. He manages to force himself to roll over, and he sees that it's the Barbie dolls that are jumping on him and hitting him. There are 10 of them. He said his mind went blank. He kept opening and closing his eyes, trying to figure out if this was some kind of dream. But the dolls are letting out some kind of high-pitched yet feminine laugh. Eventually, he faints from being so afraid. And you might be thinking, this could be just an extreme case of sleep paralysis that was brought on from drunkenness. But he woke up outside the convent, out in the weeds and the bushes. He was still wondering if everything was all a dream. Because it was so late at night, nobody could tell him if he returned home and then left again. He said that he didn't want to believe what he saw with his eyes, but there were indeed a few signs that were kind of pointing to the fact that he got assaulted by Barbie dolls. One was that his cousins were missing 10 of their dolls. Another one, his body was extremely sore and covered in bruises, as if he'd been beaten. And he says that this whole experience led him to essentially not being an alcoholic anymore. He said that he still has a drink every now and then, but nowhere near to the level that he was at that point. So, what stuck out to me in this encounter with whatever this could have been, whether it be spiritual or demonic or some kind of attack or whatever have you, is the part where he felt something on his back. A lot of cultures have some kind of entity, usually not a very nice entity, that jumps on your back and weighs you down like this. I'm drawing a blank on most of the names, but I think there's one in the UK, I think it's Celtic mythology, and there's also one in Slavic kind of tales, that this entity kind of jumps on your back when you pass by a swamp, I think. And then you have to make it to a certain distance before they'll jump off. And if you can't make it, then you die, basically. They eat you, or they eat your soul, or something happens to you, and you don't make it back. I think in the Japanese yokai, there is another one that it's a similar thing, that this thing can jump on your back, and I think it might sink fangs into you, and you have to get a certain distance, or you have to do something to get it off, or you're either stuck with it or you'll die. Like I said, I'm drawing a blank on all the names, but it's still pretty weird. And those are what I thought of when I heard the thing about he felt like that something was on his back. So, what do you think happened here? Of course, let me know down in the comments. And now for the encounter that I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the video, about possible alien refugees. So this took place in the 1980s, where witnesses were doing military operations, military exercises in Salinas, Puerto Rico. They were doing these exercises with members of military colleges, with members of other various university departments, and members of the US Navy and Air Force were also there. So the witnesses on this day were assigned to the range control on the base, and during one of their shifts, 3 officers arrived at the office, and they were intelligence majors. One of them had a patch identifying him as a member of the intelligence center in Fort Huachuca in Arizona. There was a U.S. naval officer who was wearing a khaki uniform, and a tall, dark-skinned sergeant by the name of Soto, and additionally, there was a general from the Puerto Rican National Guard. They heard them telling another person that there were problems, and the barometric pressure up there was climbing, and something could occur. As the 2 witnesses, who were now quite confused about what the hell any of this meant, tried to figure out what was going on and how it involved them, there was an explosion outside. Now, as you can imagine, everybody's immediately on alert. The officers are frantically radioing personnel that whatever had crashed there had to be retrieved at all costs. And this is a quote from the reports of Albert Rosales, I don't know. Later, the officers told the witnesses that they had located the, quote, occupants of whatever crashed, and that they said that they were in a wooded area. Elements of the U.S. Navy, Marines, were sent to the area location in the hills behind the base. It was pointed out to them that the situation was of, quote, extreme emergency. Later, one of the officers commented, "We were close, but they got away." The 2 witnesses were then ordered not to leave the range control office and stayed there for hours, and at nighttime, the major entered the office accompanied by 2 very bizarre-looking individuals that, according to the witnesses, were, quote, not human, and they didn't speak. The witnesses described the 2 men as very tall, perhaps well over 6'9". Both witnesses were staring in disbelief. They could tell that the 2 strangers appeared to be agitated, perhaps tired, as if they had been, quote, running for a long time. Their skin had a cream olive tone. They were bald, and their eyes were completely black in color, but they had eyelids. Their heads were slightly larger than normal humans, that is, and flattened toward the back. They were very thin and wore tight-fitting uniforms the same color as their skin. These outfits opened in a circle around the neck area and then covered them down to their wrists. Their torsos were much shorter than that of humans, and their arms hung down to their knees. Their hands were also long, but the witnesses don't remember how many fingers they had. Their legs were also long, and they wore high green-colored boots that almost went up to their knees. Initially, the 2 strangers were silent, but then suddenly they looked at the 2 witnesses, who then heard in their mind a question that was directed to the major. And who were these 2? By this time, the witnesses were speechless and couldn't believe what was happening. The major answered, speaking normally, "Don't worry, they are also soldiers. They are ours." but the witnesses could tell that the two strangers were upset at their presence. The major then looked at the witnesses and pointed to the taller being and said, quote, "He is the commander. They are beings from another planet, from another galaxy, that had taken refuge in the United States. We are helping them because they were attacked by another race and had to escape. They fled and arrived on Earth, specifically the United States. They are considered refugees within the territory of the United States, and we have a treaty of cooperation with them. They are looking to reunite with their people, which are dispersed throughout the universe." The major then added that the tallest of the entities, and appeared somewhat older, was of an advanced age and had seen many historical events on Earth. The shorter one was younger and was only, quotes, about 200 years old. The major also said that the visitors came from a solar system located in the Orion or Sagittarius constellation, but the witnesses do not recall which it was exactly. At that same moment, the tallest of the entities penetrated the mind of one of the witnesses and seemed to scan it. The witnesses seemed to feel a sensation of pain and appeared to complain. When the being finished scanning his mind, the witness seemed to calm down. And then the being added mentally, "He is the bad one." To this day, the other witness does not know why the entity said that. The being then scanned the other witness's mind, but he felt nothing, and the being said, "This one is good." All of this had started around 2 p.m., and it was now already 2 a.m. of the next day. The whole time the two beings seemed upset, and the officers spoke to them, attempting to calm them down. According to the main witness, something had occurred, or was occurring, that had really upset these beings. It said that after all of this, black helicopters descended upon the base, and things kind of took a turn after that. It says, quote, "Later, 2 large helicopters arrived on the base, those normally used for cargo or troop and equipment transport, and the officers told the beings that they were there to pick them up. But the beings were still upset. They told the officers that they were not going to go with the helicopters, that they would only leave in their ships and people. The tallest of the beings repeated, very upset, 'I want to talk to your president,' who was Ronald Reagan at the time, and the major and general responded nervously that there was no need to speak to the president, that the helicopters were there to transport them out of the area. However, as the beings insisted on speaking with the U.S. president, the general called the United States at an unknown location in Washington, D.C., but according to the witness, whoever they spoke to was not the president, but someone in the Pentagon. When the officers insisted that the beings boarded the helicopters, they refused and escaped, running at high speed toward the base perimeter. At around 4 a.m., there was a powerful thunderstorm at the base, and it lost all electrical power. And then a large, bright, white light appeared outside the base that descended near the range control area, and it remained there for about 20 minutes. Suddenly, the light disappeared, and the officers returned to the range control room and said, "Okay, they're gone." And immediately after all that, the electrical power returned to the base. Both witnesses remained sitting, stunned as to what had just taken place, not knowing what to think. Minutes later, the officers, including the major, went up to the witnesses and told them that they needed to talk. They separated both witnesses, each at different ends of the room. The intelligence major then spoke to the main witness. "Are you okay? Are you nervous? Take this, it will help you," and gave each one of the men a white tablet. The witness then asked what the pill was for, as he felt uneasy, but the major insisted that he take the pill, and that was an order, and it was going to help him. He said, "Take a deep breath, swallow the pill, it will relax you." He then gave the witnesses a glass of water, and repeated that it was an order, so they did just that. He was then told to count from 1 to 100, and he did, and then he began to feel kind of weird, kind of out of sorts. At that moment, a medical doctor arrived and took the blood pressure and then pulse of both witnesses. The major then said, "Look at me. Are you now relaxed? You can never speak about what happened here tonight. You know that. Listen to my voice." Then, according to the witness, something inexplicable occurred. Apparently he fell asleep, and when he woke up in the morning, the major was still sitting in front of him, staring at him. The naval officer and the general of the Puerto Rican National Guard and the others had already left. The major then asked the witness if they were feeling okay. They said yes. He then told them that they were now allowed to leave. Both men then left the barracks, and they met up with several other ROTC recruits and soon left for Ponce. So, I ask again, what the hell was going on here? Do you think that they actually encountered some kind of aliens from that far away? Better yet, I wonder how long they were here, if they were, and how long that they've been refugees of the United States. I'd also like to know exactly who were the other aliens that intercepted them or shot their ship down. And if they are refugees and yet their ship crashed, I have to wonder then, are they not able to leave the atmosphere? And if they are they not able to travel to wherever their people are? This is, of course, assuming that this stuff did happen in some form, and that it's not just all woo-woo stuff. I guess, I don't know why I thought of woo-woo, but you get what I mean. If this all did happen, then there are a lot of questions that remain unanswered, and I guess in a way that kind of makes it a little bit more believable, because you're kind of only getting what they knew. But I also have never been in the military. I don't know if they would actually just tell the witnesses that thing, which I guess maybe they would if they were literally right there and saw it. And I also have to wonder what it meant when they scanned their brain, and he felt pain, so they said, "Oh, he's the bad one." Like, I can imagine being a little apprehensive if you're just a soldier on duty, and all of a sudden 2 aliens come in with one of your superior officers. I'd be a little weirded out too. And better yet, how do all these aliens have telepathy and we just don't? But then again, it's probably for the better that we're not able to read each other's minds. And when you go back to the beginning of the encounter, I'm thinking maybe they were trying to take off and the ship crashed again. So, I don't know, there's a lot of questions that are kind of unanswered here. Let me know what you think down in the comments. And I think that I will end it off here, because that's a pretty insane encounter. And of course, let me know what you think down in the comments. Let me know your theories on it. My cat has decided to join us once again. She's becoming a regular on the podcast, isn't she? But yeah, let me know what you thought about both of those encounters. What do you think happened in the first one? Was that some kind of demonic attack? Spiritual warfare of some sort? And it seems to have helped him in the long run, so I don't know. Would that be demonic? Would it be something else? Again, let me know your theories down in the comments. And if you liked this episode of the podcast, be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. And yeah, thank you for pulling up a stump. There's links to support the channel down in the description below. And there's memberships and super thanks here on YouTube. Otherwise, I will see you Sunday. I'll leave a couple of videos up here in case you want something else to watch. And yeah, thank you for pulling up a stump. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you then.